Okay, hopefully third time lucky with this with this live. Oh my gosh, the audio has been giving me issues. So let's hope that it goes well this time. And if not, I'll just keep trying. Okay, so I wanted to do the live that, of course, we've been wanting to do for a little while. And I thought I'll just go ahead and do it. And then in the future, I will let you know when I'm doing the live again. I just wanted to make sure that this audio actually is working before I announce things again. And then, yeah, then you show up and nothing happens. So today we're just going to be talking about what I call image pressure. And that can be sort of encompassing of a lot of different things. So I've kind of divided into three areas. So the one is more appearance related, how you dress, how you look. The second is more kind of at the clinic or the practice or wherever you're working, what your behavior is. So when a patient sees you at the practice, what kind of behavior do you need to have? What kind of mood, emotional state, that kind of thing. And then the third category being more your general lifestyle, like what are you expected to eat, and in terms of activity or whatever advice or things you give to your patient, if you're expected to do that in your own life, or the behavior outside the clinic or the practice. So I've kind of divided it into these three. And what I wanted to start with was just a little exercise in writing down our own little like rule book that we have. So if you have a piece of paper or something, or if you just take notes on your phone, and just write out the three headings, one being appearance, second being behavior at the practice or the clinic or whatever you hospital, whatever environment you work in, and then behavior outside of that. And I want you to just start kind of brainstorming, what are your rules? Because we don't necessarily think about these. These are not necessarily like examined things that we've thought about. It's just what we, in our mind, this is what we should do, this is what we shouldn't do. So you can write down either things that you have this kind of internal rule of, this is what I should look like, this is how I should behave, this is how I should be living my life, etc. Or things that you believe you shouldn't be doing, or you shouldn't be allowed to look like or dress like, whatever it is. So any shoulds or shouldn'ts or little like rules that you have, because like I said, they are largely unexamined. And if you've ever had a colleague that does things slightly differently to the way that you do, you've experienced that feeling of like, oh, I didn't realize that other people didn't have this exact same rule. I just always thought it was, normal. To give you an example, for me, like drinking coffee while I'm with a patient or drinking tea or whatever it is, to me, it was just like, I didn't even consider it. It wasn't even an option for me. To me, it was like, oh, then I'm relaxing and I'm, taking care of me, while I'm supposed to be taking care of a patient. Whereas another colleague had absolutely no issue with that. Like that wasn't even on her radar, that was like not okay. So we all have these little rules, and if you think about it, there's no like objective rule book of like, this is how we should and this is how we shouldn't. And I think often when we think of that, we go like to the extreme and we're like, oh, well, I can't show up at work in a bikini or whatever it is. And that's usually not, how like the extreme side that our rules actually go into. So don't think of like complete extremes for now. That can sometimes make you just avoid the whole topic altogether. But I want you to just write down, I'm just going to look at kind of 5 minutes on the timer, and we're just going to do just one or two rules in those three categories that you feel either you should or shouldn't be doing. And then I'll check back in. So I'm going to write down a few of my own, and just for interest's sake, I'm just going to write down some that I used to have that I don't necessarily have now. You're also welcome to do that. got a minute left. Just also a note on anything you've written that could be interpreted in multiple different ways. For example, should dress professionally. Like, just go in a little bit to like, what does that actually mean? Maybe try and be a bit more specific. What exactly do you think people should and shouldn't wear, or you should and shouldn't wear? Or things like dress appropriately or act appropriately, act professionally, those kinds of terms. Try and kind of go a little bit more into detail on what that actually means. I'll just wait a few more seconds. Okay, awesome. So hopefully you've got at least one in each category of dressing and appearance, how you should behave inside the clinic, and how you should behave outside. So I just wanted to share a few of mine that have kind of changed. So the one is, I always believe that I should not wear anything that's like a statement piece of clothing, or anything that like is like expressing my style, because I felt like, because I'm a healthcare provider, my use of the word, I should be dressing professionally. And to me, that meant like we should all look kind of similar and very kind of understated, kind of blending in, nothing, out there or shocking or, expressing yourself. It should be kind of quite standardized. So that was kind of my idea of what dressing professionally looked like. Whereas now, I think completely differently about that. Like, I'd love to wear stuff that's, more expressive of myself and who I am. And I think that that also can lead to us feeling more kind of authentic and just feeling like us in our practice. So that's an example. And you might agree or disagree. That's the whole like kind of cool thing about this whole thing, is just to look at like, these are my rules. These are like things that I probably never even considered whether this is even like, a thing for other people, or I just thought it was, normal. Another one is, for example, that I always had a very, this is like in behavior with patients, I had a very kind of, the patient is always right attitude to things. So, for example, if the patient is late, I would not say anything, or I would just be like, no, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. Very kind of, whatever they do is okay, whether that's like, didn't do what I sort of asked them to do. That's a whole like thing on its own. It's not like the patient should be just doing everything you tell them to. That's a whole conversation for another day. But more just anything where they are coming with something that I am either not happy with, or I want to put a boundary around, or I am like annoyed by, I would never ever express that to the patient, because it always like, they're always right no matter what they do. I can never say anything that might be like sort of, I guess, not really in conflict with them, but sort of, yeah, I wouldn't like stand my ground. And that's something that I've changed on. I still struggle with that a lot, but it's not something that I believe that should happen. Like, I believe that they should take responsibility. And I believe that if they say something condescending or rude or whatever it is, or sexist, I'm allowed to say something, and I'm allowed to put boundaries down, which is something I never would have done previously. Something like, I always had this thing about talking about need, or like talking about when I would go on holiday or go on vacation. I refuse to talk about that with patients when I first started practicing. To me, I was like, I need to look like the person who never needs a holiday, never gets tired, never gets unenthusiastic, or just wants a break. Like, it was completely unrealistic. But yeah, that was like an internal rule that I had. Like, I felt so uncomfortable when people would ask me about my holiday. I would like justify it, like, oh, I'm just going home to see my family, or whatever it is. Anyway, so that was one. Another one, so we have a coffee machine in our waiting room. So we also go and get coffee in the waiting room. So sometimes a patient will be early for their appointment, and then I would feel awkward going to get coffee while they're sitting and waiting there. And so I would just not do it. So I wouldn't take the break that I want to take because the patient is early. It's not even like I'm running late and now they're seeing me like hanging out and having coffee while they're waiting for the appointment that should have started already. It was literally they are early for their appointment, and I see it as like, oh, but if they're already there, I can't be relaxing and enjoying my coffee. And that's something I've changed on as well. Things like I used to have such a thing about being seen at the grocery shop buying something unhealthy. Like that was just, that can't be done. I'm a healthcare provider. They can't see that I'm buying like chocolate or chips or whatever. Like, and that I've completely changed my like view on. Not only because I don't believe that that's necessarily the healthiest thing to like always be restricting and never have anything, you know, quote unquote bad to eat, but also because I'm like, no, I don't have to have this like perfect. In fact, I would think it's more realistic if your healthcare provider also sometimes has those things and understands what it's like, and also doesn't believe that, you know, you have to always be restricting and always have this perfect diet, etc. So a lot of my like perspectives have shifted on that, which is why that is also less of an issue. But I also just don't have as much of a problem with being seen like the other thing was like being seen out drinking, not even like drunk or you know doing weird things. It was just more like the actual act of drinking, like almost having your patients see that you sometimes go out and have fun and are like a normal person. I had a lot of like I struggled a lot with that. So those are things that for me have changed quite a lot. And I'd love to hear your comments. You can comment on this video. If you're watching the replay, just type hashtag replay and just type in your answer and just any reflections that you have from this, or any like rule that you thought, you know, everyone obviously thinks this, and then you kind of look at it or think about it a little bit more and you realize, oh, maybe not everyone has that rule, and maybe it's not a set in stone rule, and maybe I can start to explore the edges of that and kind of test out this rule a little bit for myself. So yeah, that was kind of the exercise that I wanted to do. And then I just wanted to touch on a few points on this, because I think, so I'm just going to have my notes out here. So if you see me looking off to the side, it's just because I'm checking that I am saying everything that I wanted to say. But yeah, so one of the things that I sort of touched on is why this is actually important, which is that we often feel like very trapped in a certain kind of role, and that we need to be a certain type of person. We have these like rules in our rule book of this is what we should and shouldn't be doing, this is what we're allowed to do, this is what we're not allowed to do. And we can feel very trapped. We can sometimes feel resentful of our role. We can sometimes feel frustrated about other people's judgments of things that we do, especially when someone is kind of wrong about us, right? Like if someone has a certain view, for example, if someone else believes that I should always be eating healthy things and I should never ever buy chips, and they see me buying chips, and they think that that's somehow like a hypocritical thing that I'm doing, whereas they don't know that I don't see it the same way. Like just getting comfortable with people being wrong about us, that can be sometimes something that kind of stops us from really living a bit more authentically and really feeling like us, and not feeling like this, like we're trapped in some kind of role that we never signed up for type thing. And I think that can have such a big impact on our happiness at work, our fulfillment, our feeling like we can show up authentically like ourselves at work, etc. And one of the things that you can start doing is kind of like I was saying, like playing around the edges with that, is just to sort of test these assumptions a little bit, and not in a huge way. Like you're not going to suddenly go from, you know, dressing in a specific way to now all of a sudden completely different, and like, and people will react, and then you go, see, like I'm not supposed to be dressing like this. Like you can do it in small steps, and you're not trying to prove the rule wrong. You're not trying to prove that no one's going to judge you for it, or prove that this is the way that healthcare providers should be doing things, or whatever it is. It's more just to kind of test it out a little bit and see whether it's really as kind of scary and big as you might think that it is. And also just to see, like, can I actually be more authentic without actually things falling apart and people leaving and, you know, never coming back and judging me and all those kinds of things. So that's one part of it, is just like why this is actually important, because it can sound kind of superficial, you know, like it's fine. I just dress a certain way, show up in a certain way, live my life in a certain way, you know, what's the big deal? But it really can be a big deal, especially if you start to notice kind of negative emotions about that. And then I just want to see if that I've touched on a little bit. And then I sort of divide the issues that we have with it, or the struggles that we have with it, into two areas. Just going to take some tea. The one is where it's a more a behavior change issue. So let's say, for example, this is something that you genuinely want to change. Like, for example, you tell all patients that they need to cut out sugar completely, or you tell all patients that they need to be walking every single day, and you're not doing those things, and you genuinely want to be doing those things. So the first part of that is just to look at the actual advice, and is it realistic? Is it suitable for you as well, or is it specific to that patient's complaint or their situation or whatever it is? So is it actually relevant to you? And if you are struggling to do it, one of the things that might be the issue is that it's completely or largely an unrealistic thing to ask someone. So, for example, cutting out something completely, or doing something every single day, or whatever it is, like things that are very all or nothing, can be very hard in terms of behavior change. And if you're struggling with it, chances are your patient is going to struggle with it as well. But the point is, if you have something that you genuinely want to change, like you definitely do think it's a reasonable thing, you know, maybe let's say exercising 3 times a week, and you tell your patients you need to exercise at least 3 times a week, and you're not doing it, and you genuinely want to be doing it, but you really feel like you just can't get that behavior change. So that's kind of one category of things that you might be struggling with. Like, you genuinely want to change something and you're struggling to change that behavior. And then you kind of go off in the direction of like, how do we change our behavior, change psychology, all this kind of stuff, which is really fascinating. And we'll definitely do deep dives on how to change your behavior. And it can also help you with helping patients in their behavior change. But that's kind of the one aspect of it. And then the other side is more things that you don't necessarily want to be doing or feel that you should be doing, but you're scared of other people's judgment of you. And then it's more about tolerating that thing. Like I was saying, kind of people being wrong about you, people judging you, people putting certain expectations or pressure on you that you maybe feel is a little bit unfair. Whatever it is, but it's not something you genuinely want to change and you're struggling with the behavior change. It's more something that you don't believe you should be doing, but you struggle to not do it because you're worried about how people will judge you, or what they will think of you. So then we go more down the road of like, how do I get better at tolerating other people's judgments? How do I get better at tolerating other people being wrong with me? And that's a whole topic for another day as well. But just sort of thinking about those two different directions and kind of sorting what you struggle with, and maybe the rules and that you've written down, sorting those as well into, is this something I want to do and I'm struggling with behavior change, or is it something that I don't want to do and I'm struggling more with other people's thoughts and opinions about me, etc. And then we can kind of dive into dive a little bit deeper into those things. And then the last one I just wanted to touch on, which is kind of like a little extra category, which is when it's actually required by your workplace. So, and sometimes this is perfectly reasonable expectations. Like, for example, I'm not allowed to have long nails, which makes total sense. I'm a manual care provider and I need my nails to be short. Like it makes sense, right? And I love having long, like really nicely done nails. I love that and I miss that. But I totally understand. Like it's not something that I'm fighting against. Whereas let's say you have something where you believe you should be able to dress in a certain way, or maybe you don't want to wear the like matching uniform or whatever, like, and it is something that's really important to you and that you believe is maybe either unreasonable or that you just feel like maybe they haven't like considered a different perspective, then you can kind of go more in the route of like, how do I address this? How do I have like those conversations with the person in charge or your boss or whatever it is? How can I have conversations around these kinds of things? And that's more, communication skill and having what can be sometimes difficult conversations. They don't have to always be difficult conversations, but just that question of like, how do I navigate those conversations with someone? But either way, whatever the thing is that you're struggling with, these are all skills that you can build. Behavior change is a skill. Navigating conversations with people is a skill. Getting better at tolerating people's judgments and opinions of you, these are all skills. These are all things that you can get better at. These are all things that can improve. So it can also be a helpful thing to just realize, like, I'm not stuck in this. This is not necessarily something that I have to do always. There's nothing I can do about it. I just have to accept it, etc., etc. All of these things can actually be changed. We can have such a kind of growth mindset when it comes to these things, that it's not static, it's not something that's just going to be like this forever. We can actually do something, even if it's small steps going in a certain direction, so that we feel safe and secure going in that direction. Like I said, we're not trying to make huge changes all of a sudden that we're uncomfortable with, especially when it's to like show, like, see, I was right about this, which is sometimes what we do. But it's just kind of taking little steps and just testing things out. Like, was I right about this? And then so often what I suggest is like kind of like we did now, just writing it out, because that can be a good way to just kind of get some distance from your belief systems, to just see it on paper, like that it's not just the truth and it's just how things are, but we can actually separate it from ourselves, like looking at it like, oh, here are my beliefs, here are my rules about life and how I should show up as a healthcare provider, etc. So we get a little bit of distance from them. That's already a step in that direction, just recognizing them as belief systems. And then the next step can just be chatting to colleagues or chatting in this group, chatting with other people and say, do you also believe this? Like, am I the only one that thinks this, or whatever it is? Like, just that can also be a powerful way to see that maybe not everyone thinks about it that way. Maybe this is something that you've just assumed to be true that maybe isn't. So just talking to either colleagues or maybe on other groups as well. You're welcome to post it in this group and we can chat about it. But that can also be a way to slowly start in a very safe way, starting to like explore these. And then you can start kind of in little ways testing out some of these assumptions at work and in your life, seeing what might not be as true as you thought it would be. And maybe you find some things are very true, and that's okay too. It's not like we're trying, like I said, we're not trying to like prove ourselves wrong with these things. We're just trying to get curious about it, see it as belief systems that we can test out, that we can get curious about, that we can write about, we can talk about, and really examine them for the first time, probably in a lot of cases. So I hope you found that helpful. Let me know any reflections that you have, is if there's anything specific that you thought of these things, especially the different categories that you would like to talk about. Let's say you struggle with a behavior change about this, or you're struggling with a difficult conversation about that, or you're struggling with navigating people's opinions of you in a certain area. In the group description is a link to set up a mini coaching session with me. It's a free session. It's just to chat about anything that you would like to chat about. It's sort of like a express coaching session. So book one of those if you want to chat about something specific, or just comment it on in this video, in this live video. You can do comments and then we'll chat about things. We'll go into a little deep dive on things a little bit further, and we can all chime in and comment on each other's comments, and yeah, just kind of examine these a little bit. And I find it really interesting to see everyone's different views and opinions and what they've kind of thought to be true. And yeah, so that's it. And I'm going to figure out how to end this live. Oh, yes. Okay. Bye, everyone.